still warming up here. The biggest crux for me was I used to have to fire up 4 iPhones to go on 4 different platforms. And BeLive has kept up with the times where I can do YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and TikTok is still the one that's not an easy one. So, all right, here we go. All right, Tom, I think we are live on the internet. I think we are live. All indications point that we are live on the internet now. So, all right, everybody. You will recognize this guy. You might be the person who's been a guest on Ask a Painter Live the most. And this must be 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe.
Yeah. Pretty close.
So everybody knows Tom. He's the guy from Estimate Rocket. Not only does he have a really cool piece of software, which doesn't do just estimates, but we're certainly going to talk about that. But for anybody who's ever heard a show with me and Tom, you know what you're here for. You're going to hear 2 business owners, 2 data nerds in their own little worlds, compare notes and go deep on that stuff. And Tom and I love data and feelings, and we're going to give you droves of that today. So, okay. Number 1, the biggest announcement that we have today, we're going to keep the housekeeping very short here, is the PCA. The PCA's website of live events is live. Registration is opening in a staggered way for all of our events. We have Women in Paint. We have PCA and Espanol, our Spanish speakers event. We have residential, we have commercial, and we have Expo. So selfishly, I want to mention one event. There's a Jason Paris and I put up a very good argument for having the residential conference in Minnesota. Probably so we don't have to get on a plane again together. But either way, we're going to have it in Minnesota. And I will tell you this hasn't been formally announced, but you're going to find it on the website. The culmination, the grand event of it is an actual party at my farm right here. So we are going to be taking the entire conference to my farm, the Slavik farm, on one of the last nights there. So people, you are never going to get this opportunity again. I am personally going to host contractors, hundreds of contractors from all over the country in the place that is the most special to me. My wilderness, the place where I raised my family, the place where I grew my business. People know this from the internet. You have seen me in the box blind. You have seen me with the trails. You see the deer heads that I get from here, the turkeys and stuff. Now you get to come here with you and your family and your employees and hang out with me. And we share some education. So that is going to be fun. That's all I'll say. You're never going to get another chance to do this. I would urge you to come do this here on my own territory. So, okay. So Tom, thank you, your patience. So number 1, Tom Droste, who are you and what is Estimate Rocket for the 3 people who have not heard of you or Estimate Rocket?
Well, I'm Tom Droste, as you said, and I'm the founder of Estimate Rocket, which is really end-to-end software system for painting contractors and other contractors that really gives you all the data that you need from the time you get a lead coming in to the time you've completed the project and gotten paid for it, including scheduling and accountability for team members and expense tracking and job costing. And it's all part of it and all very designed for painting contractors.
Oh, geez, accountability and job costing. I'm not interested in any of that stuff, Tom. Yeah, that is literally 2 things. 2 of the things you mentioned are literally the hack, the secret to running any successful business: job costing and accountability. And my God, if you can get some help from a piece of software and your support staff, that is absolutely amazing, Tom. So
yeah, it's really key. I mean, having, and as you love, I love the data as much as you do, maybe even more, Nick, if that's possibly believable. And so it's really important to me that the data that you need to, figure things out and make your decisions with is available to you.
And this is,
and so a lot of data.
What's really interesting is today you have dedicated yourself to the home service industry. I have dedicated myself to the home service industry and the painting world. So we're going to share a lot of data and a lot of feelings. And for those of you who have never seen a Tom Droste, Nick Slavik episode, Tom has done homework. I've done homework. I got colorful graphs, Tom. We got all sorts of things we're going to share. And I'm
Good.
not sure they mean anything, but everybody loves a colorful graph, right? So it's going to
It'll
be
look
awesome.
good, yes.
We are going to compare some economic data from within and without our companies. And one of the coolest things is I think, Tom, obviously we're here as lovers and respecters and as promoters of Estimate Rocket, but also we're here as business owner to business owner, and we have direct reports, we have employees, we have visions to do, we have all this stuff that we need to take care of. And I would say, I think you and I meet on this platform way more as business owners than we do as nerds in the painting industry. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, this is
No,
awesome.
no
So
question about it.
I will say this right now, everybody watching on Facebook and Instagram, if you can put this into your story, put this into your feed, share it into the painter Facebook groups, things like that, I would be much appreciated. And as well, I see a lot of familiar names, especially on Instagram here. Any topic, any question, I would challenge you guys. You're not going to have access to Tom Droste for 45 minutes to an hour like this very often, right? So rapid fire your questions. It can be about anything. It can be painting related, not painting related, any of your questions, especially Tom and I did a lot of homework on this. We're thinking about the current economic condition, economic indicators. We obviously can't predict the stock market. Otherwise, I wouldn't own a painting business. You wouldn't own a software business. We'd be doing something else. But we will say we get a stream of data and we have a lot of feelings, and we're going to share those today. So everybody, all of your questions, all of your comments, we're here for you. So Tom, you have been doing some homework. I prepared a list of sort of like interesting data points. I'm hoping at the end of this, we can bring them all together into some conclusion and action items for people. But what are you interested in right now? What are you paying attention to? What occupies your mind?
Yeah, we're seeing there's, first of all, there's the noise, the chatter, the things that you're hearing, right? Of,
Yeah.
things aren't going well. You look at, I'm sure you, just the same way I do, I get a million emails from various coaches that do great jobs, but there's a pretty common theme right now in, terms of don't let down,
Yeah.
don't give in. And and I think this is something that, depending upon how long you've been in business, can either be, okay, it's this again, or it can be, oh my God, it's time to turn tail and go do something else because, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And I think what is on my mind is people have to just stay focused on doing what they do and do the basics. And some people are going to, super thrive through it, and other people are going to survive and do okay and not do terribly, but they're going to hunker down and defend, as opposed to maybe trying to take some opportunities from the fact that everything is going crazy. And then there's going to be people that are just going to, pack up and do something different. And that sometimes is a shame, because part of it is because they just don't know. And if you haven't been through, I have a lot of years of experience going through the ups and downs. And
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is that, first of all, everyone is in pain, some kind of pain, right?
Yeah.
Either you're working twice as hard or whatever to make it, make ends meet, or continue your growth pattern that you're on. But everybody's feeling the same thing. I don't care who you are. It's
Yeah.
just a
No,
general condition.
you're right. And I think so I started on a data dive hardcore a couple weeks ago. Not only in preparation for this, but I've been also doing it for about 6 months in my business, looking for things that I don't currently have as data. And that hypothesis, the thing that got me going was stock market all-time high, uh, inflation going down, but yet the zeitgeist is I can't get a job. I can't find an employee. Groceries are expensive. And a starter house went from 240 to 420, in a very short amount of time. So for me, there
Right.
was this like dissonance between the lived experience that all of us have. And then there's the like the news and things like that. And so you have to take it all in. But for me, there's this like, it would have been easier to sort of make sense of all this if somebody would have called this a recession and people were in pain. Because then you're like, oh, yeah, well, of course, there it is. But there
Right.
seems to be these over here and these over here. So now, how that boils down into our business is, in my business, what really got me going hardcore, leads are down. Leads are down year over year, but there has to be 17 asterisks over that, which is I have changed my marketing plan wildly over the years,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've
Mm-hmm.
done 3 years of hardcore marketing experiments and I've collected data. So if I did nothing for the last 3 or 4 years and leads were down, then you would say, well, now it's a pure experiment. I haven't messed with the variables, but nobody's messed with more variables than me. That's the problem. So now you have this data, Tom, and you know this is for everybody else out there, but you have this stream of data, but then you have to like handicap it based on what you've done and then try to interpret it. So still at the end of it, I have this hardcore data. There's things that I know to be true and I'm accomplishing some missions, but it does even muddy it sometimes more. Sometimes the more data and variables you have. So that's what got me going on this. And there's data and feelings with this. There's things that from my company that I can prove that are affected this. And there's things from like the outside world, like the things we just talked about. So outside of that, what do you got for us, Tom?
Whew, craziness. So handicap data is a really, really interesting term because I've been looking at data from several thousand companies that are all in very similar business, painting,
Yeah.
Concrete repair,
If I could break into your
remodeling.
office and crawl through that window and get a couple of those graphs, oh my God, that would weaponize a guy like me, Tom. You better lock your office tonight.
Well, it's in, some of the things are interesting, but the first thing as I was looking at the data is what the hell's wrong with this data? Something's wrong here. These numbers just don't look right at all. And I haven't had a chance to do the full analysis, which is further handicapping the data to show that you gotta it's really comes down to statistical analysis, which I was never really good at. I was never really good at that math. But you got to throw out a bunch of stuff. You got to throw out the lows and the outliers and some of the high outliers, if to get a good feeling for what the data really is telling you.
Mm-hmm.
In general, what my data is telling me is that sales in general are up, not huge,
Wow.
but up. Yeah, not a lot, but again, this is also made up of a lot of winners and a lot of losers. So there's a lot of
Oh,
people who are down and there's a lot of people who are up, but the ups seem to be more impactful than the downs.
so okay. So another way to put that data would be
Weighting it.
if there's, hey, 6% increase, not everybody 6%. Some people are 15 and some people are negative
Mhm.
2. Okay, yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
those are the important little asterisks we need to put on
Yeah.
this because
Yep.
and Tom, what I'm finding from like, maybe a comparable piece of data is and please, I might mention the
Sure.
stock market or the economy a few times here. I don't know anything. I have paint on my hands. I'm a house painter. So I will say this is feelings based and I gather a lot of information from other sources and I try to
Right.
process it through my head. My understanding of like the S&P 500 and like major indices in the market is that basically one company, Nvidia, is making up for like the entire gain in the
Yeah.
stock market. And if you remove this
Yep.
one chip company that makes all the
Yeah.
chips for the AI, you basically have a tiny net loss on the overall stock market.
Right.
So like that's something that was portrayed to me because I mentioned a few times, well, the stock market's all-time high and up. It was mentioned to me that again, you take out the highs and you take out the lows and it shows a completely different story. So just
Right.
like with the painting industry went into this phase, this thing having 1% of the companies having 5 or
Hmm.
more employees and the rest of them being fragmented, unprofessional. So when you say
Right.
sales are up 6%, it probably means that the 1% are up 20, 30, 40%, and the
Right.
bottom 20% or 30% of the businesses just went out of business, you know?
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting
And
world
that's
out there.
when I'm looking at the data, it's really, I'm seeing stuff and looking at the numbers and say that just doesn't seem right. And it's because of this and actually by the time I get it into a graph, it'll probably really show it because it's going to show this whopping curve of, really high on one side and really low on the other side.
And this may be me asking for anecdotal or feelings based if you haven't done this
Yeah.
yet, but when you look at the up, when you look at the people who are
Hmm.
doing good, is there any through
Sure.
lines? Is there any immediate reactions of who they are, why they're doing it, things like that?
Um, No, other than they do tend to be the companies that are already, already have achieved a level of success. They're probably over $1 million a year in sales, which
Yeah.
helps, because to get to $1 million in sales, you've got to have some things in place in position
Yes.
to do that. And obviously you got more and more things in place if you're growing your business more than that. Each level brings you a whole new level of sophistication that you bring in terms of systems and organization and employee programs, and there's just all those things that compound. I'm sure,
Yeah.
in another 2 years, Nick, you'll never even see a paintbrush, right?
Yeah.
Even if you want to, it'll be
You
like,
never
no, I
know.
can't do that anymore, right? And it's, that's crazy. I started out as a programmer. I love programming.
Yeah.
That's fun stuff, but that's not what I do anymore.
Yeah,
'Cause,
exactly.
it's just how it works. But
No, and
yeah, so
then,
handicapping, I think, is big. The other thing you ask, though, is it's an election year,
mm,
presidential election year, and that throws such a wild card into a lot of these things, like the stock market, because historically, a large percentage of presidential election years, no matter how turbulent they might seem, end up with a good economic result. And why that is, I'm not sure, because it brings in change, if nothing else, and hope for a better, next 4 years kind of thing. But there's definitely I think like 80% of the election years in the last 60 years or something have always been followed by a really good economic year.
oh my, okay. So two data points that I have collected, are, I'm going to try to remember these because they're just like binging around in my head. So one of them is I fight against externalities and using externalities as an excuse, right? Because
Right.
Tom, that when you talk to um, maybe unprofessional, unseasoned, unexperienced contractors,
Hmm.
not bad people, but just people who haven't
Sure.
been through multiple economic ups and downs,
Right.
sometimes they tend to blame externalities. Well, it's the economy, it's inflation. It's like, I don't want to be a jerk, but tell me what inflation is and show me with the data how it's doing that to your company. And this is not me being a jerk. This is just me saying these are
Right.
the questions I ask myself. If you can't even explain
Hmm.
inflation, how are you going to blame it for why your family doesn't have food to eat? So I
Right.
try to go way out of my way to get rid of externalities. However, this year is the first time that I'm opening myself up to the idea that externalities are affecting my company, because
Hmm.
I think my data is getting, I have a large enough data set now where I think I can actually tell they're happening, but it's still a very
Yeah.
small percent. Like, I just want to say this during this whole conversation. You give me an extra hour a week, I can change that data if you really want to.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay. To my two data points, I was telling to somebody, I hate the excuse of an election year. I hate the excuse of this and that, because people sometimes think it
Sure.
can get messy and things like that. You propose a good thing, which the data proves it's actually good. There's actually overall a chance for an upturn at one of those things.
Right.
I did have somebody tell me who runs the marketing for $50 million worth of home service companies
Mm.
that the net effect, when you take a look from the client's point of view, is noise. Like you said, you mentioned the word noise, and that's a
Right.
common term in data. And they said,
Huge.
in an election year, think about what has been taking place in the news right now. First of all, we have a president right now who may not run again and may change. That is historic. It hasn't happened in 50 years. It's crazy.
Right.
That alone is newsworthy. Then there's assassination attempt. Like, are you kidding me? This changes the world's timeline, things like this. And then
Yeah.
there's the Republican National Convention. And then there's the potential change out of that president. And it's just like, this marketer said, instead of people having the bandwidth to research a home project, they're
Hmm.
watching TikTok videos of this and updates of
Right.
this. Noise just takes up, if they had 21 minutes of bandwidth for researching a home project, when there's a presidential assassination attempt, that is taken up by national news, you know? So yeah,
Yep.
it's just, and that to me is like, okay, I can't prove that in my data unless
Hmm.
unless I go over 5 election years. In 20 years, I'll have enough data,
Right.
right? But for now,
Sure.
you'd have to track that over a long period of time, and you would have to track it till the next assassination attempt, which we hope we never
Right.
have that data point, right? So it's one of
Right.
those things where you can make that good argument. So that is, I do know that to be true. I would never use it as an excuse, because if you made me prove that from the screen I'm looking at right now with all my data, I can't prove it.
Right.
Second data point is something similar. I heard this on a podcast. Somebody said they had an investment firm, and they looked back over like the last 8 like disasters, call it 9/11, call it Gulf War, just call it like, that sort of thing. And he used that those years actually have an upturn in the economy and the stock market. And in fact, he used the data point.
Right.
He said, you probably don't remember this, audience, but after 9/11, there was a dip in the stock market,
Yeah.
and he quizzed the entire audience. When do you think it came back? It was 5 months, Tom. And it was net positive again.
Right.
5 months after a terrorist attack,
Yeah.
the biggest one on US soil.
Vegas.
Like that.
And yeah.
Data and feelings. The feeling is, how
Right.
could we ever recover? COVID. And
Right.
he was pointing to all this stuff. He was saying on every disaster, COVID, 9/11, all this other stuff, the government has had a response to do this to the economy. And so
Right.
actually, you hate to even say this, in those times of uncertainty, it would be better to lean in.
Yeah. I think there's two thoughts that I have about that. One is the thing. I look at the things that we're talking about not as, I don't ever use them as, look at them as excuses.
Yep.
However, I use them as ways to explain the behaviors that I'm seeing. Like, I see people doing things that are like, well, why are you doing that? That's not in your control. It has nothing to do with your life. It has, we're around your local things in your state aren't going in that direction, or maybe they are, but whatever the case may be.
Yep.
They're just, it's noise. It's more noise of different
Yep.
ways.
It
The
is.
other thing I have to bring up, which I love this little factoid, is there used to be a law. I think it was called the Murrow Law, from Edward R. Murrow, who was a famous newscaster, and it said that every point that is delivered across the broadcasting network, and this is in the old days when they're the big three, needs to show both the point and counterpoint. So you had to give something about both sides, and that law got abolished sometime in the 80s. And so now it's not necessary that there's two sides to the stories. So that's why we see that the news media now have split off. Like, you listen to this station, you're going to get all this information. You listen to that station, you're going to get all that information. But you're never going to hear a reporter telling both sides, the both sides of the whatever the case is or the point is. And that, I think, brings a lot of unrest and helps with the division that we're seeing right now between people, and the separation, because it's so polarized into, you're either this or you're that. And there's no longer the idea of, well, I disagree with you, but here's my point. And being able to share those things without people getting mad at you and screaming at you and saying you're an idiot, and instead of just saying, well, I disagree with you, and that's why we have elections, is to choose the people that we want to represent our beliefs. And I think that's has nothing to do with politics and numbers, but I always like to bring that one up too.
No, I love that.
It's a real deal.
And you always have to, like, politics as well, but also, like, you sprinkle in social media, and I feel like sometimes this is like the snake eating its tail sort of thing, because there's some very large painter Facebook groups that I follow, and not only are they like the Wikipedia and just an amazing free resource for everybody out there for what we do, but there's a zeitgeist like pulse thing you can do where you put a couple fingers on the pulse of that Facebook group, and every third post is, I'm dead in the water and it's June, and so all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you read so much of them. I wonder if contractors out there saying, well, I'm dead too then. Or maybe if I have just enough work, or maybe if I only have 2 weeks of work, well, I'm dead too. You aren't experiencing leads. I'm not getting leads, So you wonder if there's not this like effect of, if we could divorce ourselves from the news and from some of the anecdotes on social media, I wonder if we would make different decisions or feel differently about what we do.
Sure.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I'm not
hey,
a big I'm not a big news watcher. I have
no,
to
and you know
say.
what? I will say this. I am very metered and careful with how I take that stuff in.
Mhm,
For the good of the industry, I take in a lot of painting related stuff on social
mhm,
media.
mhm.
And it's especially as being the chair of the PCA, guiding a vision and a strategy for a 140-year-old nonprofit that serves 330,000 painting contractors. People have no idea how helpful it is if you know
Right,
how to interpret that stuff and know how to take it in, not as, oh, that guy's stupid, but more of like, interesting. I'm seeing
right.
the proclivity of posts that, again, this entire conversation is I kind of teed this up as in the teeter totter has switched from 2 years ago. It was where's all the good people. Now we are
Mhm,
strictly in where's all the good leads. And I don't hear
right,
many painting contractors taking a step back and talking about that. But from somebody who literally watches a matrix stream of painter posts come in, I have seen everybody switch. Nobody cares about where
right,
the good people are nowadays. They're dead in the water. There's
right,
painting contractors out there that it's June in Minnesota and they don't have a job. In my lifetime,
right,
that has
wow,
never happened. That is wild.
right,
16 years of business. So, to me, that's why I got super serious. Really about 6 months ago, 6 to 12 months ago, something felt different. And when something doesn't feel different, back to the start of the show, you go to the fundamentals, you go to job
right,
costing, you go to accountability, you go to management, and you go to
mhm,
hardcore data collection, creating a dashboard of things that matter the most, right? How many
right,
humans do I have? How many leads do I have coming in? How many convert to estimates? How many convert to
mhm,
jobs? What's the average job size? Do I have enough work for my people? Is the work profitable? Do we need more work or less work? Do we need more people and less people? And doing that as a weekly calculation keeps you
mhm.
grounded in this because you spend so
Sure,
much time doing that. You don't have time to think about, well, inflation went from 7 to 6.5,
right,
and you're like, well, my dashboard says I need to do this. I need to recruit next week. So I don't really care what the
right,
inflation index has to do.
right. Well, and that gets back to the fact that the whatever, up or down we are on the roller coaster, it's going to change. I mean,
Oh,
it's gonna, no matter what. If it's great, it's going to change. It's going to get worse. And if it's
yep,
worse, it's going to get better. It
yep.
that happens. So you have to, like you said, focusing on the fundamentals, learning what the key indicators are for your business that drive your decision making, and rolling with them.
Tom, I've heard the cliche that I've heard some people say 7, I've heard some people say 10 years, but they say every
Mhm.
7 to 10 years we go through an
Yeah,
economic downturn. Maybe it's a
yeah.
recession. Have you heard those same things?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's exceptions to it, like anything
Of
else.
course, yeah.
There's been sequences where it was 3 years or 4 years, and other sequences where it was 11, 12, 13 years. But fundamentally, 7 to 10 years, there's an economic change.
So when you think about, like, so I started my business in 2007 and that was kind of
Hmm.
right smack dab in the old Great Recession or the
Oof, yeah, you got
stag
in on the the front side of the bad one there.
Yeah, stagflation. They were making new words for the time that we were in, Tom. I mean, there's again when the so this the reason why this conversation is important because the average lifespan of a business is 18 months. I have been in business 10 times longer than the average painting business, right?
Right,
I have only gone through one economic downturn and it was literally when I started my business. So for the average paint business that's a year old, you do not have
right,
this professional experience of this, right? And even
right,
me being I've been in the industry for 32 years. I was always too young to understand what it is. But now that I run my own business, I have a keen interest in keeping track of some of this stuff. And even I
sure.
only have really one data point for that. And this brings me around to this sort of like theory and hypothesis that I would like to center on, which is 2007, 8, 9, weird economic times.
Mm,
It's now 2024.
right,
And honestly, they are talking a little bit of recession. They're doing this, but it's been a lot of years. It's been 15, 16, 17 years. We haven't gone through a bread and butter, hardcore, black and
right,
white recession, right?
right.
And so when I was looking at the data for my company, I got really alarmed when I saw the leads were going down.
Hmm.
So what I did, I went back a year in data. And then I was like, oh, just like you, Tom. Well, that doesn't make any sense. This is stupid.
Right.
Back another year, back another year. My leads right now are back to 2019, early 2020 levels for
Wow.
leads coming in. Now,
Yeah.
asterisk marketing, asterisk Nick knows 4 more years worth of stuff, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. But when you back far away from my graph, the most useful
Hmm.
thing, and this is the first time I presented this data to the industry, I saved it for you, which is you
Yeah.
stand back from this graph, and what I see is we had about a 10-year period, 8 to 10 year period where things were just thriving. I mean,
Hmm.
literally, if you started a
Yeah.
painting company, you didn't know it, but you had 10 wins behind your sales at that time.
Right.
Then COVID hit and it got even higher. My
Yeah.
leads went up. I was my company, I like to get about 45, 50 leads a week. We were getting
Hmm.
75, 85 leads a week
Wow.
that time. And now when you stand back far enough and you see the COVID, the 2 to 3 year, 4 year blip there, it
Yeah.
was even more wins. The wins got hurricane style. And now you could say, we're in a downturn. We're doing this. If you minus out COVID, I have been exactly where I was 2019, 2020. So
Hmm.
the important part about this is the story of the data, not the data. If I look 1 year ago to now, I would say business is on fire, close the doors,
Hmm.
zombie apocalypse, get gone. If you take another year, another year, another year, you say, oh, that was a 3 year blip of weird times
Right.
where there was free money and people didn't take trips and they worked on their homes and they had lots of free time and
Right.
things like this. And now what we're back to is basically we went through a great time, we went through a really good time. Now we're just going back
Hmm.
to normal times. That
Right.
is sort of what my paint business data tells me. What do you think,
Hmm.
Tom?
I would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I think there's a and there always is this natural balancing thing. I will say that I think the you mentioned recessions going back, and we have actually had 3 or 4 recessions, but you prefaced that with they were hardcore ones, and
Oh, yeah.
you're right. These recessions have not been as serious as prior as the old time recessions. They have happened a little more frequently, although again, COVID really, that's like, oh, we gotta throw all those out because they mess up the stream because it's
Oh,
a really
that's
unique
the
event.
asterisk. That's the asterisk of all asterisk. You basically have to take that 3 to 4 year period and put it aside and
Yeah,
say special times.
yeah, you really do because it was unique and you can't really explain it, and it's probably, hopefully, not going to be duplicated. And if it's duplicated, it's not going to be duplicated the same way. It's going to be, I mean, in the trades actually did very well in COVID
Very
because of
well.
the nature of it that you were able to work. And I was in IT, which is kind of essential services, so we got to keep working too, and we all work remote anyway, so it really didn't make that much of a difference in terms
Yep.
of us being present with each other or whatnot. Um, but there were a lot of industries. I mean, I have I'm a big fan of restaurants and frequent many restaurants,
Yep.
and a lot of them had super hard times during COVID. I
The
mean,
worst. The
they were
worst.
going well. Some businesses are thriving. They were really, really struggling
Yeah,
and
they were
not
legal
going out of business.
businesses. They legally couldn't
Yeah.
operate their business.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
So.
Tom, that's really good. You really bring a human side to this, which is like, yes, from our perspective, we haven't had a recession. In fact, it's been great and it's been even greater, but literally there has been, if you're a school teacher, a frontline worker, or a restaurant or a bar owner, it's we would not be having the same podcast, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I have some school teachers in the family and close friends, and they're all ready to quit teaching, and
Yes.
they all love teaching, but teaching since COVID has just become such a they've become daycare people for the most part, highest educated daycare people in the world.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of sad, and that's a whole nother can
So
of worms to open up. But
okay, so we've thrown out some hypotheses, things that we're thinking about. Let's start looking off into the near future here.
mm,
What's most interesting to you? What are you keeping your ear to the ground with? What are you what's an opportunity? What's a threat? What are you thinking about, Tom?
I think the election just be getting over, regardless of outcome, right? Um, is always a positive thing because things get a little settled once an election is over. Again, regardless of the outcome, it's like, okay, it's over now, and let's get back with it, back to our lives.
Yep.
So, and then we'll deal with all the crap that happens after that. But
yeah, that's out of our hands.
so
We're going to react to whatever the federal government hands us, right?
that's exactly right. So, I see that as a plus. I see that um, as a smoothing, having a smoothing effect, and kind of a help things get a little back to normal, if there is such a thing as normal thing. So that's one of the things that I keep in the back of my mind, is that there's going to be a change regardless of what happens in several months. And
Mm.
if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet that it's going to be an improvement, not a loss. So
Yep.
that's one piece. The other thing is, and you've mentioned it several times already today, is we have to all look at the fundamentals, and we have to look at what the drivers are in our business, and we have to have the right number of people, and we have to not have too many, not have too few, and we have to keep track of that, and we've got to continue to work on getting new business. I mean, that's always the time we have to be working on new business, whatever that means to your particular, in your industry. For you guys, it's getting leads. For us, we don't have a huge outbound presence, so we rely on media like this, and being
Yeah.
able to talk to people and helping people, and word of mouth to kind of drive it. So we got to double down on that. Maybe we have to do more outbound things to directly reach out to people.
Yeah, and we should just say,
That's
if it feels more difficult to get jobs now, if you ask me, I
right.
would say, yeah. I
Yeah,
my feeling is, based on my data and my feelings, is it's harder to get jobs right now. Not
right.
impossible, not as difficult as you think it would be. Now, when I say that, harder to get jobs, you're like, "Oh, yeah, you can." Then people go to inflation. I say, "No, no, no, no. Listen, I'm actually spending less marketing year over year. I'm just
Mhm.
more intentional about gathering the data and moving my things around." So when I say it's
Right.
harder, how I fix harder is with maybe another hour and a half of labor a week, looking over the leads, looking over the marketing, paying a little more
Right.
attention to it. So it's not that, sometimes people swing to hyperbolic, which is, oh my God, gangbusters versus dead in the water. I would say it's harder, but really what we're doing is we're going off a center line, and I'm saying it's this much harder this
Yeah.
year to get jobs. And
Yeah.
what I'm doing is using an hour and a half a week to bring it back to here, hopefully a little over to this way too.
Yeah. No, I mean that's it. That's the fundamentals of hard work. Is
Yeah.
sometimes you got to put in some extra time to get the same benefits, and it's all about riding through these ups and downs in your business to maintain a constant, sustainable growth pattern. And sometimes one of the challenges is too rapid growth. I mean, everybody wants to grow like crazy, but
Yeah.
that brings its own problems. And then
Oh,
growing at a steady pace sometimes is difficult, because we all know that within the growth are hurdles, and
oh my God.
between this hurdle and that hurdle, it's like, well, I don't have any money yet to hire those other people that I need when I get to that next level, and it's complicated. So growth is a difficult strategy.
So, good friend Chris Kent, perfect comment, which is, I have a difficult time determining how robust my market is or not right now. It feels cooler, but my company's appetite is also larger. And I know
Mhm.
Chris. Chris and I are of similar minds, where we are actively growing and professionalizing companies. So again, how
Right.
many asterisks do you want to throw on this stuff? Which is, sometimes if you ask me, and my life or the life of my kids was on the line if I answered incorrectly, I don't know if I
Mhm.
could tell you if my market is robust or not, or more robust than it
Right.
was last year. Because you can make some arguments with the data, but I would have to
Right.
handicap it so many ways. And one of the,
Right.
obviously, growth, we're just adding more people, it's harder, it's investing. We change our marketing all the time. Our company is different, we have different humans working in it, we're trying out new areas to send to marketing. Also, Nick and Chris have one more year of professional experience under our belts as manager and owners of these companies. That's like the ultimate
Right.
asterisk. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, and I was told to stop at some point. One of my coaches was like, Nick, listen, I get what you're getting at, and I think we agree here, but you're not going to prove anything. You're not going to be able to prove empirically. You're not a PhD.
Right.
You're not a research institute. You don't know anything
Mhm.
about this stuff. Now, the next step would be have a theory and start acting on it and then follow the trends in the data. So no matter what happens,
Right.
you still want to see the data go one way. You want more
Right.
jobs and you want more humans. So regardless of you, whether you can prove what's going on out in the industry, you're still going to have to do some things to affect that data. Now
Right.
take in the stuff, but keep moving. So yeah, Chris Kent,
Yeah.
you say it exactly, which is honestly, we don't know and we can't prove it. We can have some feelings, right?
Right.
Um,
And at the end of the day, I think you have to, you're, you, like you just said, you have to look at all your data, and then you act with your gut. I mean, we still do that because not everything comes out. You can look at all this data and you can say that this data at this point in time, at this with this snapshot of data that I have right now that I'm looking at, this is the absolute clear path to where I want to go. Until tomorrow when the data changes again, and then you're like, oh, that was a blip. And
Wait,
it
Tom,
really is a challenge.
you don't have the you don't have the business owner machine next to you where you feed in a piece of data and it tells you what to do? You don't have that? Oh man, I got to hook
I
you
have
up.
not gotten that yet. Yeah,
I got to
you
hook
definitely
you
got to
up.
hook me
Yeah.
up with that.
So this is why we love Tom because this is why business owners get paid more because they are willing to risk a lot more, take these chances, make these big decisions when an
Mhm.
employee, a typical entry level employee will never want to do this sort of
Right.
thing. They'll say, if I show up, I'm getting paid. Tom and I are like, I'll show up if there's an opportunity to not get paid, then I want a higher upside on the other way. And I'm comfortable
Right.
with that because I'm going to make up that difference. I will use my effort
Absolutely.
to make that. And so we should just say, if this feels hard, it is. And
Yeah.
guess what? This is a privilege to do what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I had a good friend, roommate in college who was a contractor for me for years, programming contractor for years. And he always used to, and he finally went out and started his own business as well. I kind of talked him into it, but he would always say to me, Tom, you have such a higher tolerance for pain than I do. And I used to laugh at it, but it's true. You have to have a tolerance for pain and you have to have a tolerance for risk. And you have to decide what that tolerance is for you individually. You know, as a human, you have to decide how much can I take. And the reality is, some people can take a lot more than others, and it's not good or bad. It just is what it is.
It just is, and one of my favorite sayings, Tom. You know that. So,
Yeah.
I want to semi close or head towards closing with a very juicy piece of data. Things that I've done, my latest marketing experiment to share with not only you, Tom, but everybody else who's taken time out of their day to watch. This is not a data
Awesome.
point I've shared. I have enough data to present it. So here is, having said that, I've set up this entire conversation to say, okay, we can postulate about economy, inflation, politics, all this other stuff. Tom, we don't know, right? It's all
No.
just like things that we take in. It's fun to think about. But here's the deal. Back to what we just said. So what? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Starting between 6 and 12 months ago, I started leaning up marketing, which is where I was building up years and years of this marketing, and then
Mhm.
winter marketing versus summer marketing in Minnesota. Now you have to separate those because those are completely different.
Right.
I've tracked over about 13 forms of marketing, 13 marketing channels, and what I found myself in over the last 3 years is, and I will. Oh, you know what? Maybe we can do a little fancy dancy. I should just throw up a colorful graph here sooner or later, just to,
Yeah.
just to do something. Uh, let's see if this will show up at all on here. So, okay, we have. All right. So for all of 2023, the specific numbers don't matter as much as the overall numbers. 44% of all of my leads came in through direct mail. That is a lot. And that is what you would call, Tom,
Wow.
eggs in one basket. That's
Yeah.
a lot,
Wow.
right? Now, when you take in
Yep.
previous client, word of mouth, repeat, and referral, you're looking at 23, 24%. So really what you're looking at in mine,
Yep.
70% of my leads came in from one paid source and one
Yep.
source that I don't control, word of mouth, repeat, and
Wow.
referral. And
Yep.
that is an interesting thing to dwell in. My plan for the last 6 to 12 months was to say, in time, if things get tough, diversifying is going to be the way to do it. That is my hypothesis.
Sure.
I don't want one form of marketing to have all my eggs in my basket because not only could people change, could the economics change, but what if that flyer company went out of business? Right? That would be very tough to replicate. So what I did was I've been on a 6 to 12 month process of, let me get this up here, 6 to 12 month process of doing more micro tests and diversifying. I wanted to take that huge outlay of cash and this word of mouth repeat and referral. I wanted the same or better of that, but I wanted to bring up all the other forms of marketing. So I started doing a lot more in social media, email marketing. We did some more yard signs. We did door hangers and things like that. And I am proud to announce today that now there is not one lead source I have of all of them that's over 22%. And we have diversified that. Now, it doesn't, my flyers went from 43.5% of all of my leads to 22.2, but the leads aren't less, right? I'm still getting the same amount of leads with flyers. I just have so many more leads coming up in the other areas. It actually steadies them out. So what you're seeing here is this is just a sample of 1 week of my marketing where 19.4% came from word of mouth. 13.9% came from web search, which was, again, I did more targeted AdWords, more Google local service, things like that. We have 8.3 that came from our vans, right? We got a lot of vans circulating around. We have 16.7 that came from previous. We have 22.2 from flyers, and proud to say almost 17% from Facebook. Now, Facebook is labeled here all social media. So really what we're doing is I brought up social media probably about 4x over that time period. So my theory now is that instead of just flyers, I want to keep that steady, but I'm going to bring other things up, and I'm going to bring all my marketing spend to the point of diminishing returns, which mean I'm going to keep spending and keep spending and keep spending till my leads flatten out, and then we back out. So we go. And on this one, I want about, let's say 1, 2, 3, about 8 leads a week from flyers. And I'm going to keep increasing spending. And the second I see those leads not increase too, I'm going to back it back down to where I get the 8. And then if I start seeing the leads go down, I bring it back up. And just like a pendulum, you'll find where that spend is like that. So those are the things that I've been doing quietly for the last 6 to 12 months. And I will say this, it's the experiments I've done for the last 3 years have been brutal. They have been a scoop shovel of money, a scoop shovel of time, throwing everything at the wall. The theory number 1 was, what can I get to stick? Number two, how little do I have to throw at the wall to get things to stick? And that's where we're at now, which is like, okay, we can get a lot of stuff out there. We start collecting data and we just get rid of some channels. And then like I do the pendulum test where we bring it up and then it down. And then I track the leads and we, oh no, we're down. No. And I bring it right to the point where one more dollar doesn't get me one more lead. And then we stay there and try another form of marketing. And I will say that what I'm not getting is 80 leads a week. What I'm getting is 40 to 50, but the set ratio is about 85 to 90%. So the marketing, the story of my marketing over the last 3 years as mass action, craziness, get the data, it's been hone the data. And now it's, let's see how efficient we can get. So I will say this, we have never had more jobs. We've had less leads. We've never had more profitable jobs. And it's all because we right-sized our marketing, not mass marketed like that. So that's what a consistent, sophisticated professional company would do. And I will say the story of 2024 in my business world is I think we have found a professional, consistent way to get reliable leads, whether it's a good economy or not. And right now, Tom, the thing that makes me happiest the most about all this stuff is whether it's a boom time, boom only adds to this. Whether this is a downtime, 20% of all the paint businesses in the United States are going to go out of business, and this sucker is going to be the thing that gets me through. So,
yeah, that's I have to say that the way you're doing the marketing is the way you have to do it, and it's painful. It's really painful because tracking it is not trivial. Knowing exactly which things came from the flyers requires that follow up, because it's not just the lead you really want to track. You want to track the lead plus and its source plus the success ratio of those and the profitability ratio of those to know which ones are really winning and losing.
It's
pretty huge.
It's that funnel thing. And we begin
Hmm.
the sophistication with that 3-step process of cost per lead, cost per estimate, cost per completed
Yeah.
job. And so if a marketing company or another painter says, man, I can get you $45 leads, I'll say, hold on, how good are they? Like, how many
Right.
of them convert to estimates? How many convert to sold jobs? Because I would take a $500 lead if
Right.
it led to a $20,000 closed job every time. I don't want your $4
Right.
lead if it never even turns into an estimate. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a real, marketing is, boy, it probably requires more care and feeding than the humans on your team do in
Oh,
terms of,
Tom, that is
working
an
through it.
understatement of the century. If you think humans are squishy, irrational, feral cats, marketing, listen, I say this, I show you my beautiful, clean data and all this other stuff. It could be completely different next month. My
Right.
data could prove that nobody came through social media and mailers, and all of a sudden I just want to tear it all up and start over. So,
Well, but that's why that's the other challenge with the marketing, with advertising is you have to constantly be monitoring where you're spending because they do dry up. I mean, they just go away, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, we gotta shift that. Don't keep spending there. You got to move that money and put it somewhere else because it may literally have dried up. Whether it's a technical reason, like all the changes that Apple's made in their
God, yeah,
ad presentations and all that stuff. Yeah, full-time job. Just
well,
another full-time job as owner of the
just
company.
just a marketing manager for a company as well too. It's not a big deal. Never formally trained, but you got to do marketing analysis and that sort of thing and A/B testing. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, dude, I was putting out oil primer on a barn 3 years ago, and now all of a sudden I'm doing A/B testing through Meta with the help of a consultant. And you're just like, nobody ever prepared me for this, right? But if you
Yeah,
want the privilege to do this, you gotta solve labor, you gotta solve leads. I mean, those are
right.
literally the things that every input has some source of getting the stuff done and some source
Yeah,
of people who allow you to get the stuff done. And entrepreneurs, whether you like it or not, have to solve those two things. Tom, if you
right.
and I could shovel money at a human who would bring you as many humans as you like and give you a customers and as many people to fulfill that customer wishes as you want, everybody
Yeah,
would be a business owner. That's why we're
yeah,
here.
right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, Tom, you get the last words in this show here. Any interesting data points that you haven't shared? Any final thoughts? Any final words for all our loving listeners?
Well, it's always a pleasure to share, and Chad, I love our conversations. I am gonna continue my quest on some of this data to make something more meaningful, and I'll find a way to share that with you because I think it's going to point up some very interesting things and some very interesting things about different trades, which may sound like,
Ooh.
well, I don't really care about the other trades, but
Oh
there's some
no.
interesting things that happen, fluctuation wise between the trades that
Yeah.
may be an impact of your business and maybe something that you can address in your marketing and there's always different things you can do to make adjustments when something's sliding to this way or sliding that way, and that's what we got to do. Got to keep adapting and adjusting based on data and feelings.
Data and feelings, and talk about
Yeah.
data and feelings. I will share one thing. Wendy Anderson commented a couple times here. She's in my area. She is one of my most beloved clients. We
Yeah.
just went out and did another estimate for her too. And what she extolled is clear, concise, timely language,
Hmm.
communication. So refreshing. We've worked for her before. So again, thank you
Yeah.
for the excellent leadership. Again, Wendy knows that we give her a world-class paint job, but what she didn't
Yeah.
mention is Sistine Chapel of Restoration. What she mentioned was the professionalism, the experience, and
Yeah.
things like that. And if you want to talk about getting through a recession, that's the times where businesses like mine call upon the Wendy's of saying, we have known you for 10 years, we have done good work, like please give us an opportunity again. And she did.
Right.
And that is literally the reason I was put on this earth and this business was created. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Beautiful. Tom, if people want to learn more about Estimate Rocket or choose some data with you, how do we
Sure.
get a hold of you? What do we do?
Well, you can reach out to me at tom@estimaterocket.com, and our website's always a good place to go. We have all kinds of resources on it. Check out the resources menu where we try to keep up with our blog activity and our webinars and all kinds of interesting videos on YouTube and Vimeo. So all kinds of info there.
Tom, I will personally thank you for being who you are in our industry and helping all these contractors. You're the tip of the spear for professionalizing this industry. You care, which is a hack for success. It's a good thing. You're obviously passionate about this, and
Yeah.
seriously, Tom, open invitation. You gather up some more of that data. I'll update people on my marketing plan, and let's do this again, man.
I'll be ready in a month.
Dude, okay, it's a date, Tom. We got
Sounds
it.
good.
All right,
Thanks, Nick.
everybody. Thanks for
Appreciate it.
watching Ask a Painter Live. You guys are the best. It's noon on a 80-degree sunny day in Minnesota. There's tons of people watching, talk with two nerds and data and feelings about all this stuff. So you guys are the best. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next week.